Welcome to our webinar. This is the Blueprint for Customer Success Team Enablement. I'm Elizabeth Tahunar. I'm a Senior Customer Success Manager here at Tatango, and I'm joined by my lovely customer, Chris Wood from Qlik.
Hi there. Yeah, thank you, Liz. And just to introduce myself quickly, so I run customer success operations here at Qlik. And for us, customer success is basically kind of four key functions. It's customer success, it's support and onboarding, it is renewals, and it's customer experience. For those of you that don't know, Qlik is a data and analytics company. And we basically, what we do is we serve up in a kind of end-to-end manner across our active intelligence platform. So we serve our customers with data and analytics, and yeah, good to be here. Thanks, Liz.
Excellent. And with that, we'll go through a bit of our agenda and what you can expect today, what we are going to be covering. So we'll give you a bit about the project background between Qlik and Tatango, talk to you a little bit about our keys to enablement success and what we found through working with one another, how we measured adoption. As you all know, metrics are very important, especially in the Tatango system. So we'll talk about what some of those metrics look like, some key takeaways, and of course, we'll leave a little bit of time at the end for Q&A. So do let us know if you have questions. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass back to Chris so he can give us a good background on the project from the Qlik perspective.
Yeah, so let me tee this up a bit then for you. So really where this started for us is, as a company, a big push for us is, well, in two main areas. So first of all, into SaaS. And secondly, a big investment for us as a company is in customer success. So really what we were looking for was a tool that could support that journey. There are three main kind of stages in this, I guess, as we kind of put the background out. So big one for us was streamlining a lot of our processes. A lot is new, a lot of new people coming into the team, a lot of process we're trying to drive. So first of all was streamlining. Secondly was scale. So again here, a lot of new customers coming in, a lot of new team members, a lot of kind of big company process we were trying to put in place. So again, what we needed was a tool that could support that. Being very prescriptive in the way we approached it. The other big one as well is, as I mentioned earlier, we've got several groups within the tool. So the way they interact together, the way they collaborate was critical too. And as we'll touch on later, Tatango is a great way to do that. So really that's the background for us, how we ended up where we are today.
Correct. And so as the Tatango CSM for Qlik, I was able to meet with the team, understand what their goals were, and we got to work building their enablement plan. So I wanted to take you through a little bit about the keys to success and what that looks like for us. So keeping those goals in mind, that'll be important as we continue to progress through. The first key to success that we had was the utilization of the Success Block Marketplace. For those of you who may be new to Tatango, this is something that is very helpful in delivering scale. So as Chris mentioned, there were several teams that needed to be onboarded in actually very short succession to one another. And the way that we were able to scale this configuration and implementation was by utilizing the Success Block Marketplace. The marketplace allows you to allows your admin to not have to start from scratch each time you want to build on an initiative or one of our success blocks. You can actually just pull it straight down from the marketplace and begin building from there. What this allowed the Qlik team to do was to follow proven best practices, keeping that, of course, at the forefront of our minds, but also, as I mentioned, quickly get various teams up and running with the ability to duplicate success blocks that had already been created for teams and then quickly create new ones as well. So that was critical to our success. The second key to our success was identifying those critical roles. Now, we'll spend the vast majority of the rest of our conversation talking about one of these roles in particular, and that's the power user, but I don't want to lose sight of the other two roles because they are so critical to the success and have been thus far for Qlik. So the three roles that we identified were the Tatango admin. This individual is responsible for the configuration of your Tatango instance, and they also are responsible for the ongoing management of Tatango. They play a very key role in kind of keeping all of the pieces together. Next, we have the SME, the subject matter expert or the power user. This is, again, individuals who serve as your kind of internal knowledge base. They know Tatango forwards and backwards, and they help you to continue to facilitate and bring more team members on quickly. Last, and certainly not least, are your managers. So identifying managers early on and getting their buy-in early on was critical to the Qlik project, because it allowed us to emphasize the importance of using the tool, which again helped to drive our adoption metrics. We'll talk a little bit about driving adoption metrics later on, but just know that these are kind of the 3 key roles.
Yeah, and if I could, Liz, just before you move on, I think, again, the point to emphasize early on here, and we'll get into more detail, is particularly with those power users of SMEs, a big part of this for us was mixing up. So we've got a mixture of new people, very seasoned CSMs, for example. So again, we tried to make the team very diverse in terms of its constituent parts.
Exactly. Yes. And that's a great segue to our power users, taking kind of a deep dive into power users. What are they? Who are they? And how do we enable them? So power users from the who, as Chris mentioned, they're typically a various group of individuals, but many times they're a small group of leaders within your organization, oftentimes managers. They have a vested interest in ensuring the success of the rollout of the tool. And in this case, we did have a mixed group. Some were people managers, while others were senior members of the team. So we had a good mix, which led to a diverse group to help us with this rollout. What exactly were they tasked with doing? These power users, they helped us with our user acceptance testing once configuration was complete. They helped us to lead trainings for end users. And in an ongoing status, they are our frontline defense for questions. They are that internal knowledge base, as I mentioned before, and they are super critical to the ongoing growth of Tatango within Qlik. How do we enable them? This is very important. The way we enable these power users is through special training sessions and office hours. So there was an approach that I'll go over shortly in a moment that relates to the enablement plan. But before we dive into that, I wanted to walk you through the value of the power users. As I really thought about the value, although there is tons of value behind power users, what are the 3 main items that I really feel came out of this with Qlik and working with Chris's group? So the value of these power users was simple. I've mentioned this a few times now, but internal knowledge. There is one CSM assigned to the Qlik account. That's me, and that's wonderful. And I work with this group day in and day out. But what's important to know is that there are hundreds of Qlik users that are utilizing Tatango. So we needed a quicker way to get them the answers that they need as they're working with the system. Enter your power users. So they are an internal knowledge base that helps to answer those questions more quickly. And for those questions that perhaps the internal knowledge base or these SMEs don't know, they can come directly to me. So it creates a really nice funnel and way of escalation point. Secondly, it's a natural lead to top-down leadership. As I mentioned before, these power users have a vested interest in making sure that the Tatango rollout is successful. It leads itself beautifully to the third option or power user value, which was increased adoption metrics. This was really a whole system working together to make sure that the rollout was successful. There was knowledge and content where knowledge and content needed to be, and of course, the system in place to support it.
Yeah, and I'd probably add here as well is by saying we weren't, or you say the words on a slide, very much this was a top-down approach. We weren't afraid to push people to, we'll cover this later, but we have a lot of metrics around adoption within the teams. And also we've even gone so far as in areas such as incentives we run, tying adoption and use of the tool to other areas as well, such as comp. So again, we've really pushed this, particularly the middle one on the screen here.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's been a huge help in this. So now that you know who we identified for these critical roles and a little bit more about the power users and the role that they specifically play, let's talk about the enablement plan. How do we kind of tie this all together? So as we were going through the process with Qlik, we knew, of course, keeping in mind those goals from the beginning, that we really needed to get several groups up and running quickly. So we needed a process that was iterative in nature, but also drove forward success and growth. So the process that we utilized was simple. It's a cycle. You can see it here. each time a new feature or a new group was brought into Tatango from the Qlik side, we first would enable our admins. Well, what did that look like? We would help the admin understand what configuration needs would need to take place, review those configurations with them, train them on anything additional that they may need to know. Once that was complete, we would have them pass that knowledge on to the power users. Again, the small elite group, they would learn, go through special trainings, enablement sessions, Q&As, learn what they needed to know, and then they would pick up the weight for us and help us carry it to the end users. So we then would have another set of training, Q&A sessions, office hours, led in part by the power users, and then imparting that knowledge to the end users. And it would just repeat itself from there forward. What this does is it allows the admin to free up their time to continue to configure and to build for new groups, while the power users carry on the torch and take that internal knowledge with the team. Chris, I would love if you could walk us through a bit about what this enablement plan looked like from the internal side at Qlik.
Yeah, so you see, basically our approach here was it's kind of broken out into 4 steps. So before we did anything, the most critical part for us was just defining exactly where we wanted to go. So what are the outcomes we're trying to drive, and what is the framework really that Tatango supports? So for us, it was easy. The framework was our customer journey. So that's where we started. Nothing happened until we had a very clear view of where we wanted to get to. Second up, and we've obviously touched on this already, was identifying the team. So you covered the roles that made that up. Other big things as well, and again, we found this was really, really important in driving success here, was just socialization. So, we involve power users in building out the training content, for example. We really try to over-communicate, over-socialize this across the different groups. And bear in mind too, this continues for us. Again, we'll cover this later, but we have some teams in the tool already, and we have a roadmap for other groups we want to pull in. So that socialization continues. And then finally for us was the rollout plan. So this is where it all comes together. It's training, it's office hour sessions, it's other formats to really drive this amongst the teams. So yeah, once again here, 4 parts to it, but most critical to me was that upfront piece.
Absolutely. And one thing that I will add is actually on point number 3, the socialization. This was something that was so valuable in this rollout, I have to say, from my customer success perspective. What I found actually was because the teams were being socialized with the training. For example, if we were going to be doing a training on, let's say, how to build segments or scorecards within Tatango, the leadership and the power users were letting the end users know about that a day or so ahead of time. So what I found as the CSM was when I would get on to help co-lead the training with the power users, there were tons of questions. And I love questions because I don't know about you, but when you get into a presentation and nobody has a question and they're all just looking at you, it can be a little daunting. So this really led to a lot of interactive learning together. And they had time to think about it and mull over it, which then led us to the natural progression to grow and answer the questions that needed to be answered for the rollout.
Yeah, and that did work really well. I think having a kind of 2-part office hours call, so partly just general questions that the team had, but also partly picking a particular topic for that week.
Yes.
So again, I think that 2-pronged approach worked really well as well.
Perfect. All right, and then a bit more here, Chris. I know that this plan, implement, monitor, and optimize side of things was really critical internally to Qlik. So if you could walk us through just a little bit about what this flow looked like from the internal side for the project.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail on the slide, so I won't go through everything. It's more the theme here, I think, that's important. So yeah, basically, going back to the way we approach this. So we started with the detail. So what are the tasks? What are we trying to really drive here? So that's the top part of the slide. Then you need to obviously translate that and begin to think about what that starts to look like in Tatango. So really, you start there with the flow, which again is back to that customer journey piece. Then we map out the process. That is where this starts to now make its way into Tatango. And again, the kind of critical piece here is at the end. So it's the measurement. So you've mentioned this already. Measuring how we're doing adoption, that those KPIs are critical to making sure that we're following through on what we designed in the first place. So yeah, those are the 4 stages we went through.
Absolutely. And you make such a good point. The measurement side is so critical because we can put something in place, but how do we know if it's actually working? So let's go through that a little bit. I'd love to walk you through some of the metrics that I helped Qlik track and that we worked together to ensure that their adoption was going in the direction that we wanted to see it go. So an important thing to know is that through the course of these trainings, once we would get, of course, our power users trained and then our end users trained. Once training had finished for those end users, we entered what we would consider about a 6-week period of time of adoption. And during those 6 weeks, I was monitoring, helping the Qlik leadership team monitor different adoption metrics. And the 4 that you see here on the screen are the main metrics that I was measuring. And I'll give you a little detail on each one of them and why we selected these. So first and foremost, we have what we refer to here at Tatango as WOW over MAU. But for those of you who are not familiar, that's weekly active users over monthly active users. We track this internally as something to help us understand if people are consistently utilizing the tool. We're looking for this percentage to be about 50% or higher when we track the adoption metric. So what I wanted to see was, okay, great, we've trained all of them, but are they actually using the tool on a weekly basis? Daily would be even better, but we started slow. So are we getting them to log in? Are they using the tool? Is it becoming valuable for them? So that was one metric. The second metric, if you take your eyes to the top right-hand corner, would be the completed task. And you'll see in the little parentheses, this is last 7 days. This was important because we were tracking this on a weekly basis. So I wanted to see over the course of the past 7 days, the number of completed tasks that were occurring across these groups. Of course, week over week, I was looking for that number to increase. Again, that doesn't mean that I necessarily need these Qlik users to have more work to do or more tasks, but I wanted to know to drive forward a point of consistency, as we've talked about before. So are they understanding where to find their task in the system? Have we configured the right amount of task for them? Are they overwhelmed, or is it not proving valuable? So that was important for us to see as we continue to measure. And what I saw each week with this group was week over week, we would see small percentage, like a 5% increase in completed task. And then we would jump to an 11% increase in completed task. And that was how I would begin to track for the leadership team. Okay, it's working. We're seeing more people complete their task on time, and we know that it's happening. The inverse of that is actually the number of overdue tasks. So if you take your eyes down to the bottom right, the inverse, as I mentioned, these overdue tasks, I wanted to see that the number of overdue tasks was decreasing over time. And that's exactly what we saw, thankfully. So as, of course, completed task goes up, we should see those overdue tasks go down. This meant that the CSMs and the various groups that we've onboarded, they got it. They understood where they needed to go to get those tasks completed. The tasks themselves were making sense. Things weren't sticking on their account profile pages for a long period of time, and that's what we wanted to see. So last but not least would be touch points. That's the kind of key to the workflow here in Tatango. So I wanted to see that the number of touch points in the last 7 days was increasing over time. Again, I often coach and help customers understand that touch points isn't necessarily a quantity conversation. It's we would prefer you have quality touch points in the system. We want to know that you're having quality engagement with your end customer. However, as you're beginning to onboard, it's important that we know that the amount of touch points that the CSMs are latching on, they understand, and we're driving forward more engagement. We're kind of building that historical repertoire of information with our customers. So we do want to see kind of an up and to the right trend for the number of touch points, at least for the first couple of weeks. Anything I missed there, Chris, in terms of the metrics and how we viewed them internally, or how you all viewed them internally?
No, very comprehensive. Yeah, and I think a good and accurate representation of really how we've driven this. So no, all good.
Excellent. The last thing I want to show you here in terms of metrics is I had a lot of conversations with the leadership and the power users at Qlik about understanding how their team was actually doing. So I want to show you one item that was incredibly helpful. If you aren't familiar with the team spotlight in Tatango, I would definitely recommend taking a peek at this in the tool. So the way I navigated here was just by my main navigation menu, and I came down here to the team spotlight. And What I encourage the leadership of Qlik to do is to utilize this information in their team's one-on-ones. It became a great resource for that top-down leadership for the group. So they were able to come here and understand not only the number of touch points, but the work breakout. So how were their CSMs working with customers? Were they spending most of their time on escalations, on renewals, or on different various activities that they were responsible for? And then they can also see the number of accounts that they've covered in a given period of time. So this gave them additional insights into how the team was actually performing in terms of task and touch points. There's also a work focus section here where they could understand, again, more about those success flows and how the team is doing. Last but not least, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we did build a Tatango user segment for the leadership to help track. And the way that we did that was just here by coming to create a segment. And if you're a global admin, you'll be able to see this Tatango user segment here. And what we did was we began to build out. There are tons of columns here, so we began to look at the work. Those open and overdue tasks, this is where I tracked them. So I began to add overdue tasks, open tasks, things that had been completed, for example, and then this is how I would get that information by user. So I hope that's helpful and insightful if you are looking to track how your adoption is going within the tool. Excellent. And with that, we'll go ahead and navigate on to the blueprint. So tons of information has been shared. What does that look like? How could you replicate? And what's this kind of blueprint for enablement? So four main steps that we would recommend in the way that we proceeded as a group. Number one, most important, identify your power users, identify those critical roles and get the team together that's going to be helping you carry forward this project. Number two, work to enable your power users. This is like a mini rollout, if you will. So we took this very seriously, made sure that they were ready to go. And then use your power users to help you enable the end user rollout, carry forward the knowledge that they've learned, and of course, most importantly, monitor and adopt. And a couple of key takeaways in closing that Chris and I have come up with would be in order to address the item of scale or the need for scale across multiple teams, use the success block marketplace. Use it to your advantage. You don't need to create every success block from scratch. Let the success block marketplace help you enable the growth and the scale across multiple teams. We just mentioned this one as well, but identify and enable your power users. Allow a small group of individuals to help carry forward the weight and the growth across these multiple teams. Typically, these power users are leaders, as we mentioned before, but ensure that if you don't have leaders in your power user group, that you are enabling a top-down leadership approach. When there's buy-in from the very top, especially with Tatango or any software tool that is, it will trickle down and it will become second nature to the rest of your team. And last, use metrics to monitor your adoption. Tatango has tons of metrics internally for you to use to measure those, so you don't have to dig too far to find those metrics, but use that to your advantage to help you understand if what you've put in place is working for the team. And if not, you can always go back and course correct. And forward looking, Chris, this is an exciting slide for me because of all the work and time we've put in together. So just as kind of a closing where we are and kind of where we're headed, I'll give you the where we are and I'll parlay over to Chris to give you the where we're headed. So through all of this work that we've done together, we've onboarded over 100 users to Tatango. We've built more than 10 success blocks, and we have done so across 4 various teams. And Chris, I would love to know, or if you're open to sharing with the group, where we're headed moving forward with our enablement plan.
Yeah, so we've obviously done a lot already, and this continues to build. So for us, it is, well, there's some medium-term and longer-term ways we take this. Yeah, currently, and again, this ties into your success blocks marketplace comment on the previous slide, Liz.
Absolutely.
We're looking to get our renewals team into the tool. So again, that's going to hopefully be a relatively straightforward process, leveraging the content there. But yes, this to us gets big. So renewals comes in, and we've not started this yet, but we've also had requests from other parts of the business outside of customer success. For example, our partner organization, because again, we'd like to get them in a tool and really use Tatango to drive actions and tasks that they're so good at. So yeah, this to some degree is undefined, but yeah, we've got some immediate groups we're going to go out here. And the other one as well that we're making great progress on is your health score framework, so the dynamic health score.
Yes.
We're putting a lot of time into this at the moment, as you know, Liz, better than anybody. And there's a lot of excitement around this as well, and we're looking to roll it out sooner rather than later. So yeah, there's lots going on.
And I think something that's exciting to mention, actually, in line with the enablement plan with health that you mentioned, Chris, is that the cyclical process that I talked about before will apply for this new rollout as well. So there are individuals, the power users, who are busy at work right now figuring out what that health score will look like. When we roll it out, we will use the same process, make sure our admins and power users are enabled, and then only at that point will we roll out to end users. It just keeps that kind of internal knowledge cycle continuing to go around. And with that, Chris, I want to say thank you so much for joining me and sharing a bit about our journey together.
Sure, happy to help.
Excellent. I look forward to our continued growth. Thank you, everyone.